Welcome to Tech Bites. My name is Karinne, Bessette, and we are 5 weeks to VeeamON. Now, we're going through this entire countdown for what you should expect at VeeamON and get you hyped as we are. And we want to promote this week the diversity that we're bringing to VeeamON in addition to the community we showed you that we're bringing to VeeamON from last week. And I'm joined by some of my fellow speakers we'll be having this year. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten Stoner. It's been a while since I've been on a Tech Bites, so I'm really happy to be back. And I'm really actually super excited to talk about VeeamON. It's one of my favorite events to attend and throughout the whole year. So excited to be here, happy to be back. And yeah, I'm in Columbus, Ohio, like usual today. I think we have all Columbus girls today, or Columbus women, I should say. So representing. Leah, how about you introduce yourself? Is this your first time on Tech Bites?
It is my first time on Tech Bites. I've been a guest on Industry Insights before, but it's the first time that I've crossed the chasm into the Tech Bites world. So hello, everyone. My name is Leah Troscianecki. I am a Principal Product Marketing Manager on our Veeam product marketing team, covering our Microsoft Azure solutions. And alongside the product strategy team, I was part of the team that put together all of the content for VeeamON. I'm also a presenter as well. So all of us are calling in from Columbus, Ohio, and we're super excited to chat with you guys about the women of VeeamON. Rin, do you want to get us started?
I sure do. So we have tons of sessions this year at VeeamON. We're bringing the technical content that you expect to have at VeeamON with over 16 women at this time scheduled to present in person at VeeamON, as well as over 17 sessions all over the board. And all three of us are presenting on more than one topic this year. I myself am going to be covering with Leah some IaaS, PaaS, SaaS on Cloud9. We'll be covering all of those things that you may take into consideration when walking into these different realms. And Kirsten, I know you have some sessions you want to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Me and my colleague Emily will be talking about saying goodbye to your ransomware worries with immutable backup. This is going to be a great session to attend. Immutability is a topic that is very prominent in today's industry. There's always been talk about it, especially when it comes to securing your data from ransomware. Ransomware is a continuous threat, as we all know. So having that immutable backup option is very important. So not only talk about what Veeam brings to the table with version 12 immutability, but also how you can choose the best immutable option for you.
Excellent. And Leah, I know you have some executive sessions that you're super excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very fortunate to be joined again by Robbie Hudak and Tamika McKay. Both of them helped us talk about V12 at our most recent launch event, but they really only got kind of short bites about their experience with Veeam and their perspectives as C-level executives in IT. So we're bringing together entire breakout sessions about their stories. So my manager, Sam Nichols, is going to be co-hosting a session with Robbie all about her experience with multi-cloud and really thinking about how you standardize your protection across multi-cloud environments, making sure that something like ransomware doesn't stand in the way of your transformational initiatives. There's also going to be a really great session with Edwin, our field CTO for EMEA. He's going to be doing an interview with Tamika McKay talking about her perspectives and her experience as a C-level executive, really combating ransomware and trying to shore up cybersecurity initiatives within her organization at the city of Fort Lauderdale. And what's really interesting about both of these sessions is we wanted to enable Robbie and Tamika to really talk directly to power users of Veeam, really kind of crack open the heads of potentially your bosses and get to know a little bit about what's top of mind for them as it relates to backup so that you can ultimately go back to your organizations and advocate for any projects that you may want to execute, maybe an upgrade, maybe expanding your usage of Veeam, maybe trying to work more closely with cybersecurity teams and cloud teams. A lot of these executives can kind of make this more of a strategic priority, but we have to enable them to understand the strategic importance of backup and recovery. So I'm really excited to have Robbie and Tamika kind of come to the fore of our sessions, in addition to all of the other amazing speakers across our partner teams, product marketing, product strategy. We're even going to be joined by Archana from IDC. She's going to talk a bit more about cloud data management and some of the research around Microsoft 365 and SaaS-based data. So really, this is going to be a tremendous opportunity for us to celebrate women in tech. And I think this is the most women that we've ever had present at VeeamON, the most sessions featuring a woman presenter than we've ever had at a VeeamON. And there's more to come. Certainly, a lot of the sessions are live on the VeeamON attendee portal now, but we have some sneak peeks that we're rolling up our sleeves, and we'll be releasing more in the weeks ahead.
Excellent. And Kirsten, I know you had some more insights about some of those sessions that were coming down the line beyond just what we're doing, but some of your favorites that you've noticed come in.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of sessions around, cloud and security, building better backup and recovery, and also connecting and celebrating with the community. VeeamON is the place to meet other backup and recovery professionals. So not only will you be able to hear from customers through the different sessions that we're offering, you'll also be able to talk to them, network with them, learn from them, and have a good time doing so. With that said, should we move to the next slide?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a bit more about what else we're doing at Veeam overall to promote women in tech. So certainly at VeeamON, really considering diversity as a part of our event and really a key pillar of it. So certainly there will be a lot of great representation and some great discussions about women in tech at the event. We're also thinking about the experiences. So there will be a mother's room. There's going to be sensory nooks. So for anybody who's really been keeping up with neurodiversity in the workforce, I think that the event is really kind of critically thinking about how we can make the in-person event experience more inclusive. I'm somebody who's learning a bit more about neurodiversity and my journey in work, and finding that, it makes sense that I really enjoy work from home because I'm able to control my environment. And I get overwhelmed going to an event in person. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of noise, it's a lot of lights. So being able to have, services like the sensory nooks, I think are going to be a tremendous opportunity so that I can bring my best to these events. And some other things that I really love about these events are the networking opportunities. Of course, there's unstructured networking like the celebrations and the cocktail receptions in our solutions expos, but there's also going to be some structured networking opportunities. One that immediately comes to mind is we're going to be hosting birds of a feather conversations. So these will be small conversations hosted by technical leaders talking about specific topics. So if you've ever wanted to sit together in a group of just a couple of people to talk about some of the top of mind topics in our industry, this will be a structured way to do that so that it's not overwhelming. This idea of networking is very, sometimes you go to a solution expo and you're walking around, you're like, how do I just walk up to somebody and introduce myself? Sometimes we need a little more structure to make that happen. And certainly, I think this is a great opportunity for everybody in the community, but definitely for those who come from marginalized groups like those of us on the call. And this is, I think, a really great segue to talk overall about women in tech at Veeam. Veeam has a lot of employee resource groups. The one that we'll talk about here today is called Women in Green, which has been around for many years, and it has a tremendous amount of programming opportunities, one-to-many curriculums like webinars and guest speakers. We have in-person and online networking opportunities, and there's even a formal mentorship program, and many of the Veeam executives participate in that mentorship program. But the one that we really wanted to spend some time on this call talking about is the Veeam community and the opportunity that we have with our amazing community to bring a little diversity to the fore. So Karinne, Kirsten, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about allyship with the Veeam community. And so to do that, I wanted to bring just a few stats. Karinne, Kirsten, and I have been prepping for this Tech Bites session by doing a little bit of research. And, we found some really interesting and in some cases some eye-opening stats that I think could kind of anchor this conversation a bit. In particular, you hear a lot about, diversity isn't just a moral thing that companies should do. Companies are here to make money. So what does diversity really do to help drive that bottom line? And a lot of studies have shown that companies that really value diversity are more profitable, more innovative. So as an example, Boston Consulting Group did a diversity and innovation study, and they found that companies that have an above average total diversity score, and that's comprised of things like gender and race, they found that the above average total diversity companies had 19% higher margins driven by innovation revenue versus other kinds of revenue like, your standard recurring revenue models. And I thought that was really interesting because it really clearly demonstrates that diversity breeds innovation of thought and drives very important outcomes for these organizations. So for those of you in the community who are thinking, I really want to work for companies that are innovating. We work in tech. I don't want to work in the basics. I want to keep pushing the boundaries and doing something that's new. Companies that value diversity tend to be the ones that do focus on innovation and value that. So if you're thinking about your career, that might be something for you to keep in mind. The big thing we wanted to talk about, though, was all about allyship, because I think that our Veeam community, you guys are really focused on how you can improve your careers, how you can network. So we all have an opportunity to work together and really be allies for folks that maybe don't always have a voice in the conversation. So just a couple of things to kind of keep in mind as we're talking about this concept of allyship today. One is that 32% of women in technical engineering roles that were surveyed by McKinsey & Company noted that they were often the only woman in the room. That's happened to me. I know that has happened to Karinne and Kirsten as well. We pretty regularly are the only women in a conversation. And I think that that's really important for everybody in the community to know that we're often kind of the odd man out in a lot of these conversations. And sometimes that can have some pretty negative impacts on our careers. Women leaders who were surveyed as part of this survey noted that they were more likely to be mistaken as someone that's more junior than the men who were surveyed in this survey that McKinsey and Company did. And that's, again, certainly happened to me pretty regularly. I pretty regularly have to kind of assert my experience in conversations. And we didn't want to leave out this concept of intersectionality either. Intersectionality refers to multiple marginalized vectors for a person. So as an example, I pulled this really interesting stat from McKinsey and Company's same report talking about how Black women leaders are more likely to have someone say or imply that they're not qualified to be in that kind of conversation versus all women, regardless of their intersectionality, and certainly more than the men who were surveyed in this report. So these are some really interesting things for those of you in the community to think about. The reality is our experience in tech is different. We don't live in this perfect world where everybody who is just the right person for the job gets hired and that there's this egalitarian experience. It's just not. So what can you do about it? I think we would love to see companies continue to make changes and make everything a much more equitable environment. But, I'm very lucky that in my career, I've had an incredible network of allies. Certainly the product strategy team is a great example of that. I pretty regularly will be on calls with some of Karinne and Kirsten's colleagues, and they'll make space for me in conversation, or they'll note that I'm an expert in a certain field. I'll get invited to be on things like this Tech Bites, and it's a really tremendous opportunity for me to continue to grow my career. So we wanted to give you all in the community this challenge, this allyship challenge. So I want to bring Kirsten and Karinne back into the conversation because I think, when we were chatting before this session today, we talked a bit about some of our experiences with allyship and some of our favorite ways that some of our colleagues have kind of stepped up for us and helped make this a much more equitable work environment. So Karinne, why don't you kick us off and maybe talk about a few of the ways that you could challenge our community to bring allyship into their daily work?
So I think one of the biggest concepts if you've not heard this concept before, definitely do some of your own research on it. And it's the term unconscious bias, and pretty much an overarching term to all of the pillars that we are going to kind of talk about within our experiences can kind of be looped back to this terminology that there's a standard put on any gender, any role, and breaking these down to overcome and promote someone regardless of any pre-existing notions that you may have towards that person, and start to make a better future. And the first one that I think is really important is having an equal access to network. So Leah talked about us on our team pulling her in to do content, and without a doubt, the very first person when our enrollment went up for presentations, reached out to Leah like, hey, let's do a presentation together. And hers and I were one of the very first that got submitted for presentations for VeeamON, and we were accepted because we have two different sides of this conversation that make a very powerful point for cloud and integrations with those clouds. And I'm really excited to be able to present with her at VeeamON. Now, the next pillar that I think is very, very important is anyone that does make it into higher positions that gets, quote unquote, one of those seats at the table. Sometimes we get this feeling of, maybe, I don't want to call it superiority, but we feel like we've earned it, or you've gone through so many badges and gates that this gated community is sort of restricted to everyone else, when we want to make room at this table and allow everyone around us the equal opportunity to be there with us for the right reasons, and not for the unconscious bias that we may put on everyone else and make the hardships to get there. Make it easier for everyone to get to the right place. And I know, Kirsten, you had some great notions that you've run into out in the field as well.
Yeah, and Leah did mention this earlier as well, is one of the things is just really creating space in the conversation for everyone. If you're in a big meeting, just making sure that you're asking, other people's opinion, or even pausing during your talk or your idea and trying to gather feedback from everyone in the room. Because a lot of the times, diversity really brings the best ideas. Having people offer ideas from different backgrounds with different experiences really can innovate and drive technology and product and development. And then also, celebrating women's successes. It is hard to be a woman. It's hard to be anybody really these days. So just, celebrating women's successes, showing that you're supportive of them. If you have a friend or a colleague who's, nervous about submitting a session, encouraging them, saying, I know you can do it. And then when they get accepted, just saying, I'm so proud of you. I am so excited for you. You have a voice, and making everybody feel comfortable and that they're doing a good job is really important.
Yeah, absolutely, Kirsten. And I think, part of what you just kind of modeled out is some of those more private conversations that happen. One of the ones that I wanted to talk about as a way to be an ally is to be a confidant. You know, Back when we used to all work in offices, we had water cooler conversations, and now we're sort of all working from home, which I said I love. But it means that we have to work that much harder to build those connections with our fellow employees. And that's really important because we all need to blow off steam sometimes, and we all need to have that safe person that we can go to vent to get advice from, to get challenged by. So being a confidant and being able to really listen and understand that somebody else's lived experience might be different than your own. I think it's a really great way that you can be an ally, because it's taking some of that mental load off the rest of us. I have a great network of women that I pretty regularly will vent to, and we all kind of confirm each other's experiences. But it's really nice to be able to put that mental load on somebody who doesn't have that kind of experience and still feel heard and validated. So that's a really great way that you can be an ally. But one final one that I wanted to bring in, and certainly it ties back to VeeamON, is this idea of skilling. We as women, ultimately, yes, we would love to see a safer, more equitable work environment. But at the end of the day, anybody who's an employee is meant to be driving outcomes for the companies they work for. It's all about that bottom line. And I think a lot of the programming that goes to women, to people of color, focuses on the soft skills. How can you be more assertive? How can you build negotiation skills? And those matter, but sometimes that takes the attention away from achieving outcomes for your organization. So one of the best things that you could do as an ally is to encourage skilling. Encourage anybody that you know that maybe needs that extra boost of confidence, that maybe has been sort of treated like they're more junior or has insinuated that they're not qualified. Help them identify ways that they can improve their skilling. As an example, tomorrow I am taking my Microsoft Azure 305 certification. I've taken 3 of Microsoft certifications already, but they were all at the 900 foundation level. And I'm really proud that I passed those, and I passed most of them with flying colors, but this is my first deeply technical certification I've taken in many years. So I'm really excited, but I'm super nervous. And fortunately, I have a couple of friends who are Microsoft experts as well that have been sending me tips and tricks. So post in the chat if you have any tips and tricks for 305 or for any of the other Microsoft certifications. I'd certainly appreciate the support and the tips. But that's a really great way, again, that you can be an ally. And VeeamON is a great opportunity, speaking of a good transition, to get people to increase their skilling. So Karinne, do you want to talk a little bit about how people can participate in VeeamON and maybe a little sweetener that we have for this session?
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get us wrapped up here. And if you are interested in seeing any of these sessions, we do have a free registration at VeeamON.com. And if you're interested in joining us in person and seeing exclusive content that won't be even recorded, and some panels that we'll have for you to come ask great questions, we have a 10% discount code right now for VOMIAMI1001. And that will give you 10% off of your registration. And we have this on the slide here. And while you're registering, we have this wonderful video for you to see all of the rest of the things that you can enjoy at VeeamON.